Welcome back, everybody. We are back with another episode of A Touch More. A lot going on. We got a lot of responses from our last episode on the WNBA and the historical racism and what we broke down all about what's been happening in the WNBA this year. So we'll talk about that. Plus, we're diving into the intersection of sports and culture with the feature we're calling Where in the World is Paige Bueckers?
Where in the world is
Paige Buckets? Really excited for this one. I have lots of thoughts. And we're going to have a new bicker of the week.
Support for A Touch More comes from L'Oreal Paris. Later in the episode, we're going to be sharing some super inspiring stories from alumni of L'Oreal Paris's Women of Worth program. We're just letting you know here to build the anticipation, so stick around.
I'm really excited to get into a lot of the response from the
there was a lot of responses
we had, last week.
I feel like I have it divided in two categories. I have like real people. There's like real people who responded, which was amazing. So many people reached out, like people I actually know. And then there's like social media responses, which I also have a interesting discovery that I'm going to share.
Oh,
not
my
that
God.
interesting.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah. So, and we have a new bicker of the week, so we'll get to that.
Oh, we sure do.
And we have a new song.
Never short on those.
But as usual, we're going to start with the check-in. A lot has happened in the WNBA playoffs. The Aces have been knocked out. Their three-peat attempt is over. We're going to touch a little bit on, not the game itself per se, but, there was a lot swirling with the Aces this season. So, Becky Hammon in one of her press conferences has said, and I quote, "And this is why three-peating is hard. Let's be real. The whole league has been pissed off for the last 8 months, and my players are in commercials and this and that and being freaking celebrities, and you get distracted. That's why it's hard, because human nature is distracting." I personally, when I first heard it, when I first watched it, I didn't take it how a lot of people took it. I didn't think Becky was criticizing her players for being in commercials, for being celebrities. Becky gets it. Becky knows what's up. I just took it as like, this is why it's hard. Because the target, the X is on your back. It's even bigger now because you're in commercials, because you're getting attention, because that's what winning does. So that's how I took it. I think the one thing she was adding to that, which she did say a day or two later, was that she feels like her team lost an edge. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I did. Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
We did discuss this.
Yeah,
in the privacy.
I didn't watch the clip live. I just read it.
Lesson learned.
Oh my gosh!
We all
talk
do it.
about journalistic integrity.
We all do it.
I'm not a journalist, by the way. But it read different than the way that she said it. But I think it did hit on this for me is when. Well, first of all, heavy is the crown, as they say. There's a reason that saying exists. When you win, not only do you have a target on your back, but you also have a target on your back in a good way, because people want to put you in commercials. They want you. They want to pay you to do stuff. They want to give you brand deals. You have more opportunity. You get a chance to celebrate in a different way. Everybody wants to be, close to the champion. So it's so difficult to. It is difficult to keep the edge. It's difficult to be great for a long time. It's difficult to be the very best for a long period of time. And that's why dynasties are so rare and so lauded in our culture and in our sporting culture, and why people and teams and players who have won multiples of anything, particularly in a row, are, automatically vaulted into the greatest of all times kind of rare air. I think there's also something that happens with athletes, and I think it happens more with female athletes, and we're sort of getting into this phase where women are having a lot more opportunities. They are, able to have more brand deals, and they are able to make more money off the court, which comes with responsibilities. They are going to more fun things and just sort of being out in the real world and, culture more. And it is frustrating. I've experienced this myself and I think just sometimes the narrative around athletes is like, if you're not focused on your sport 100% of the time, then like you don't care enough. And it's just, that's stupid, first of all. Second of all, you can't be. You need the balance. Like you need the steam blow off. You need to do other things as you should. We get to live this like incredibly, privileged and cool and fun life full of opportunities. And you got to take advantage of that. And I think sometimes, and I have definitely seen it with the growth of women's sports, of whether it's like franchises or GMs or coaches I think people just want to control women, period. And certainly women who are independent and who have power and want to make decisions on their own. I think sometimes there is this like control aspect that's like, no, like don't get too arrogant or don't think too much of yourself or, don't get like such a big head. Or people say about women in relation to men's sports, like, we like you guys because you do it for the purity of the game. And I'm like, no, I absolutely hate that. I don't think Becky's doing this here. On my long, now we're back to Becky. I think she's been obviously she was in the W and overseas for a very long time, been on championship winning teams. She obviously was around men's professional basketball for a long time. She's won multiple championships herself as a coach. So I think what she's saying is like, this shit is hard. And it's hard to stay focused. The kind of focus you need and the kind of motivation you need to win a championship and to have that edge. And obviously, they're the ones that gave the Liberty the kind of edge and chip on their shoulder that they needed to very clearly be on a mission this year and make it back to the WNBA finals.
Well, we always talk about, we have on this podcast for sure, how you generally do have some sort of epic failure before you're able to put together a championship season. So Aces experienced that in 2021. Liberty experienced it last year. It's kind of what it is. I think what you're really talking about is something we're going to get into later when we talk about Paige Beckers and just her world tour.
Her world tour.
A work tour. We'll get to that.
It's both.
But as far as the Las Vegas season, they should be obviously incredibly proud. Yeah. I think a lot of people were, I don't know, they were coming down on them a little bit. But the reality is the way their roster was set up, it is a top-heavy roster, okay? You have 4 Olympians at the top. They added a 5th in Tiffany Hayes, which was amazing. They have one of the best, I think, to call AC a role player really doesn't really like encompass everything that she brings.
Elbow 3, barbecue chicken, post up.
But yeah, they had incredible role players. You can go down the list, but they're top heavy. And Andrea Carter actually talked about this on ESPN the other day when she was covering or recapping the series. When those 4, A'ja Wilson, who had an incredible season, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young. When they're clicking on all cylinders, they are a dominant team. Yeah. And then the other players on the roster, of course, fill in are important. When they're clicking, they're dominant. When even one of them is a little bit off, it doesn't work quite as well. And that's just the build and the makeup of that roster. So what you saw this year was Chelsea Gray missing a lot of time. And then even when she was still coming back from her injury, having to do that in front of other people is never easy.
Yeah.
Publicly, coming back from an injury publicly is, I can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I feel like we saw the best of her in these games. Like this was she was like back. It just was,
it just wasn't
right at the very end.
It wasn't as consistent as we've seen from Chelsea Gray for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Jackie Young, had a overall like great season, but in comparison to her last 2, again, a little more inconsistent. Same thing for Plum. Not bad seasons. I mean, not bad seasons.
All-star
great
Olympian
seasons.
gold medal seasons, but yeah.
But the 4 of them, and obviously A'ja had an MVP season, but the 4 of them have to be clicking in a certain way. So it's interesting because I think this offseason could be wild for them. The facts are Plum is a free agent, AC is a free agent, and Tiffany Hayes is a free agent. The other fact is that A'ja Wilson's salary actually drops by like $25,000.
Okay. A little more space.
A little more space.
Okay.
So this is we'll talk about this next week when we talk about expansion drafts, but this is this is a moment where this year is kind of a little bit of a throwaway year because 2026 is when things are going to dramatically change. So the questions are, do they core Plum? And just to give people a little bit of a glimpse on what that means, it's basically one of a couple things. If you get cored right now for Kelsey Plum, it either means she's with the Aces next year getting max money, which puts them in a squeeze. They've already been in salary cap squeezes before, puts them in a squeeze. She can stay with Vegas and actually still negotiate that deal for amount of years, for amount of money.
Yeah,
she doesn't have to take the max.
They don't have to core her, right?
Well, they have to core her if they think she's a flight risk. That would be like, listen, there's 1,000 ways to talk about this. That's kind of the starting point.
She's unrestricted, Tiffany's unrestricted, Hayes and Alicia Clark are all unrestricted?
Yeah.
Do any of them have cores on them already?
I don't, good question. Maybe Tiff. I don't know if AC does.
I don't think AC does.
But you're prioritizing at that point.
Yeah.
And you're also thinking, okay, if I think this player is a flight risk, do I core them to then work out a side and trade? There's also another scenario which happened with Elena Deladon this year where she got cored. She ended up not finding a sign and trade scenario that worked for her, and she just didn't play. It just has a couple ramifications for the team and when they can start. They have to hold that money on their cap, but now we're getting in the weeds. So it will be interesting to see what happens. There's a good chance their roster looks different. There's a semi-good chance it looks dramatically different. There's also a chance those four stay and are intact. But I don't know what that means financially for the rest of the roster. So it'll be interesting. And it does beg the question, I'm not really asking it. We can kind of touch on this later. They won 2 years in a row. Back-to-back is no small feat. Does this put them in the world of dynasty? I don't know.
I think you got to get one more.
Exactly.
I think so. I mean, they've been to 4 finals and what? They've been to the last 4 finals? 20?
No, 2.
They were in 20.
Oh. Sorry, I thought you meant in a row.
So they've been to 3 finals in the last 4 years. They've won 2. No, you got to win another one.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, a lot of people were talking dynasty. I, very similar to how I cheer at Liberty games, do not care. I don't care. Go Storm.
Okay. I want them to stay together. I mean, this is not akin, and the Warriors had a much longer dynasty, but Clay's on the Mavs now, and that's just a sad story.
It is weird. I think they're arguably one of the best backcourts of all time, and then A'ja right now, which I know it's something you want to talk about, is Stewie and A'ja, and just being the best 2 players, both in their primes.
Yeah.
So it is fun to watch a group like that play basketball. They are very entertaining to watch. There's no hate there. I'm actually not hating regardless.
Love everything
Just
about it. Love the
Storm.
personalities. Love how good they are. Love all of the antics. Love the vibe. I think it's great storytelling and personality for a growing league. It's obviously keeping one of your best teams together. Would be really cool, but I mean, also.
Okay. Yes, if I can zoom out, take my Storm hat off. Yeah, I think them staying together is just more compelling than if they didn't.
Yeah.
But I think the WNBA is going to be so different in the next 2 years. It's 2 years and beyond. Yeah. It's really hard to say. We might see another
changing so quickly.
Team. But yeah, I know you want to talk about Stewie and A'ja and how lucky we've been to have 2 players be as dominant as they are, both in their primes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just my thoughts watching the basketballs. I obviously most of the time don't know what's going on. I'm like looking at the game and you're like actually like watching the game. So you know like all the ins and outs. But it just was so obvious. And when you watch, either of these two, Stu or A'ja play, they're always the best player on the court. Like whether they have the most points or whatever, you can just feel it and you can tell. And so to watch them in a series together, for the 3rd time in 4 years they've been in a playoff series together, I think. To watch the way that they're both growing up and growing into their prime, to watch the way that they're getting better. It's giving Messi Ronaldo at this early stage. Obviously, playing against each other for, so long. They obviously both played in Spain. They are generational talents, Stewie and A'ja, both of them. And rarely, I asked you this question. I said, is there another duo of generational talent that played in their prime at the same time?
It's tough.
You said Dee and Maya.
I said Dee and Maya, but now that I'm sitting here doing some quick math, I'm so bad at math. A'ja and Stewie are only 2 years apart. Like two WNBA seasons apart, right? Like one was drafted 2016, one was drafted 2018.
Yeah.
Dee and Maya, I forget exactly when Maya was drafted, either 2009 or 10, maybe 11. Yes. So we're talking 6-7 years difference. So it's not the same.
Yeah. So what I feel like with these two is, first of all, of course, everyone's going to pick everything apart, but I'm just like, what a joy.
Well, we're going to see Caitlin and Paige and Juju. I just want to put that out there.
I can't. A triple?
Sorry.
I mean, oh my gosh. But what a joy and a gift it is to be able to bear witness to like two great players in their prime, two players who very clearly care about winning above everything and who have like commitment to their game like no other, who continue to get better. You have the like rivalry within the league. It's just so much fun. Like I just know as a soccer fan how enjoyable it's been to watch Messi and Ronaldo continue to push each other. And I have no doubt in my mind that they reach some of the heights and the records and the, you know, the goal tallies and just the level that they have because they want to be better than the other. And you have that benchmark. It's hard when you're the only one pushing to, you know, we argued
you need something to chase.
In the Olympics, are we even seeing the best of Katie Ledecky if she had someone on her heels? Would she be swimming faster? Like probably. So it's just really cool. And obviously there's been so much, you know, conversation about the WNBA in so many ways this year, but just what a joy it is to witness these two being absolute superstars. A'ja Wilson's season, we just have to say it, was just pure greatness. I mean, it was so good. She was so dominant. She's done pleasing people, which I love that for her. I just feel like my advice to all female athletes is like, you're never gonna be able to be a version that's like acceptable. You're always gonna either be like, you know, too loud or too black or too gay or too straight or too pretty or not pretty enough or too arrogant or too much of a killer, not enough of a killer. So like you might as well just be yourself. And I feel like a lot more women are stepping into that so much more, and A'ja's definitely doing that. And so just congratulations to A'ja on an incredible season, unanimous MVP, and the Aces, and go Liberty. They're in the finals. Once again.
By the time this comes out, we'll know who they're playing.
Oh,
I'm excited
big
for that.
Big game five coming up.
Yeah, before we move on and kind of, you know, talk about our last week's pod and just the responses we've gotten, something that stuck out to me was all the trolling that the Liberty and the Aces are doing, which this is a part of sports, right?
This is my favorite part of sports.
So last year, the Aces won. I won't even get into the nitty gritty of that, but they won. They took their trophy home.
Yes, they did.
And you know, they did a little gloating in their parade. They got to drinking and they got to chatting.
Yeah, they did.
Really what happened.
Yeah, they did.
And there was a comment that I know Stewie for sure took personal. I think the entire Liberty roster, I would assume, took personal. It's when Becky and AC were up on stage talking about, you know, how AC held Stewie to whatever, 3 for 17 or 4 for something, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I think the Liberty had to chew on that for a while. Then, not for a while, for a whole year. Been waiting for this. Then you had the Aces show up to game one in their Tims. So, you know, you got a little John, a little shit talking there, a little trolling. And obviously now that the Liberty won, they could finally speak. So their organization spoke on Instagram when they had a pair of Tims.
Sensational response.
On the logo, half court, and just said,
"Bravo."
That was the tagline. But
Bravo
then you also
to
had
the Liberty social team.
You also
Excellent.
had some players finally speak out, right? So you have Jonquel Jones referencing last year and calling some of those actions, some of those statements. Even was adding Kelsey Plum, how she described them as not, quote, being like this is not a direct quote actually, but not being like a real team. They're just individually good players, whatever. So JJ referred to that as classless. Stewie talked about how big this was for her and her family, given that her father-in-law had passed away during this time last year and just what was happening for her. But then also was like, yeah, I have receipts. We all have receipts.
Receipts were kept.
Yeah. And so I only bring this up because this is the type of coverage you want to see.
Yeah. These
are the narratives you want covered because this is real. This is really happening between these two teams. So just it really hit me like, this is what we want. Instead, we're still getting bullshit on viewership numbers, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this is what you want. Support for A Touch More comes from L'Oreal Paris, who are proudly presenting their 2024 Women of Worth honorees. Like Danielle Umstead, the founder and president of Sisters in Sports Foundation, which is very close to home for us at A Touch More. Sisters in Sports empowers women with disabilities to find belonging in sports and beyond. We at A Touch More, like Danielle, believe that all women belong in sports. Another 2024 Women of Worth honoree is Genevieve Rao, the president and founder of New Voters, a youth-led national nonprofit that engages high school students through nonpartisan mentorship to ensure their voices are heard in politics. This work is so important, especially right now. In today's episodes and over the coming weeks, you'll hear directly from several of the unbelievable women in the L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth Alumni Network. We will be sharing their stories, in their words, directly with you. Let's celebrate these women and let them inspire us to make change in our own communities, because they're worth it. Learn more about this year's recipients at womenofworth.com. So now when you think back to last week, when you've gotten some feedback, anything you want to add, share?
Well, my mom loved the episode and felt like it was very informative.
She didn't like that I said mother-in-law, though, did she?
No, she was like, you threw me under the bus. And Sue was having
I had
defend me.
back.
And I was like, I didn't, Mom, but I know why you would feel that way. I was just saying the proverbial Denise.
I feel like I was saying mother-in-law was a placeholder.
Yeah.
She took it to heart, though.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the feedback I've gotten is like, okay, this makes more sense. This puts more context around the narrative. I think there's been some other really good pieces. Sarah Spain's podcast with Christine Brennan. I thought Sarah did a great job of trying to nail down someone who refused to answer a question, basically. Lots of people have spoken on it. I mean, I think the narratives still exist and are still happening, and you're going to touch on the viewership points, but hopefully people are starting to like understand what's happening and the fact that journalists do have choices and the media has choices on what they choose to cover. I mean, it begs the question of like, where are these narratives coming from? And then what's the responsibility of media to, if you're just like, well, people are saying that X, Y, and Z. Well, who are the people? Mm-hmm. If those people is like a bot farm, then that, or you only got it from social media, it's not actual people, that's not real. So it's like the journalist's job to sort of see through all of the, talking that's going on to like get to the truth of the matter and like get to what's actually happening.
Yeah. In the interview that Sarah did with Christine Brennan, the thing that stuck out the most to me was Christine both calling Twitter a cesspool and totally acknowledging how ridiculous of a place it is and the trolls and you can't control it and just totally acknowledging that. And then simultaneously, when asked about why she asked Carrington the questions that she did, it was like, well, it was news. Well, they were talking about it on social media. Well, it was national news. I'm giving the player an opportunity. And it's like, well, which one is it?
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, what we're both wondering, right? For journalists, how do they navigate the social media aspect of their coverage? And that is probably going to be the question that all journalists are going to have to start asking themselves. And this is probably the starting point, because women's basketball doesn't have all coverage, doesn't have the ecosystem that I've referenced before. So there is a lack of balance in that coverage. Yeah. So when it becomes too much social media troll, that's when these narratives, start taking over.
Yeah. Well, I want you to talk about the viewership and the like framing around the viewership, which kind of leads into a little bit of a bigger conversation of like, why are some people's knee-jerk reactions to just constantly frame women's sports in a negative light always? Like, just because we don't make $1 billion and we only make $100 million, like, doesn't mean we're not making money and doesn't mean that things aren't successful. So get into this, because I think this is really, really smart. And I think it's really important to understand, like, where we're at in women's sports and what it's going to take to grow, of course, but like what's happening with the narratives that ultimately shape people's ideas and thoughts and beliefs about what's happening in women's sports, and particularly in the WNBA.
No, I mean, what's happening with viewership, and anyone who pays attention has seen this. There's been a ton of articles and more so headlines, which, by the way, headlines are actually becoming more of the problem than the actual article.
I believe they call it clickbait.
Yeah, I'm like, why? I actually don't know how this works. I'm like, why do the editors get to pick the headline and not the journalist who wrote the article? But I'm just going to leave that in the atmosphere because we don't know the answer. So anyways, with that, a lot of what we've seen, a lot of the conversation we've seen around the viewership numbers has been about how Caitlyn being out of the playoffs is why the viewership is low. Mm-hmm. That's like the gist, right?
Yeah.
So if you're mammers, if you're a mother-in-law, and you open up
mammers,
you open up wherever you get your news sources, probably like yahoo.com.
Yahoo.com.
For sure.
Right after she Googles Megan Rapinoe for her morning, what's going on and where is she?
Oh, does she still do that?
Yeah. Definitely. She's got to know what's going on.
Yeah. So anyways, if you're someone like mammers and you open up your Yahoo, you're going to see WNBA playoff viewership down now that Caitlyn is out. And is that somewhat factually accurate? Yes. It's not accurate. Viewership numbers with Caitlyn Clark are astronomical. She is a big draw.
Yeah.
She brings in all the things. We know this. We've said this. And yes, the games where she's not playing have lower viewership. But in the WNBA playoffs, and we'll use the semifinals as the example, the WNBA playoff semifinal games where Caitlyn obviously is not in it because her team lost are still breaking records from previous WNBA years, are still cracking 1 million viewers. I believe the record was at like 930,000 overall viewership, but it got up to like it peaked at like 1 point something.
Mm-hmm.
So these numbers are still really high and they're still really meaningful and they still show and tell a story of the viewership that is being gained in the WNBA. And yet some people continue to flip that. Those people, I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it. I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it. And that's what I just don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a product? What are we calling a product? A platform? What's it called?
Product. Yeah.
A product
This
that
is a product
that ESPN
that they invest in.
Yeah, that's where these viewership
It's your
numbers are coming.
product.
Yeah, it's a business you're in. It's not that they can't. And by the way, it's not that they can't be critical of certain things. They can have their opinions. But that's where I don't understand the framing of that. That's where it loses me.
900 and something thousand people got on their devices and watched the game.
Yeah, and
that's
we haven't
a
even
lot
gotten
of
into
people.
like the NFL Sunday of it all. Like we haven't even gotten into that part. But that's I want to say the semifinal game is up like 130%.
Yeah.
And that's without Caitlyn.
All the games are up.
Now, the reason why it really, really gets my blood boiling is because it's the exact same thing we see in every other sport. When, I'm going to go on a limb here, but when Messi plays, something tells me the viewership's higher.
Ticket sales are up.
But we're going to use basketball. This last year, the Celtics and the Mavs were in the finals. That viewership was amazing. It was like 5 point whatever million. Amazing. Lower than the previous years. Lower than when LeBron's in it. Lower than when Steph Curry's in it. Why? And yet, we don't hear anyone shitting on the Celtics and the Mavs. That is not how this works. It's because there's some players that are just so transcendent that the viewership's going to be insane no matter what.
Great.
And it has nothing to do with the other players, the other teams. And that's the part that I'm really understanding. I do think with Stephen A. and with Shannon, there's an aspect of them like defending their stances on her. Like, we were right about Caitlyn and this is our defense. And I still think there's something twisted there because nobody ever said that Caitlyn wasn't going to be a marketing gem, a unicorn. So that's where, but that's just my take on it.
No, I think you're exactly right. Shannon Sharp starts to talk about the attendance and says like basically that Caitlyn had the highest attendance in the playoffs, which Caitlyn Clark played her first 2 rounds in Connecticut, which only holds roughly 10,000, and they got swept, so they never made it back to Cambridge in Indiana to play a home game. So they absolutely did not have the highest attendance. So he
got his wires crossed a little bit.
Exactly.
I think he was trying to talk about the regular season and how some teams had to, like Washington, D.C., the Mystics is an example. Atlanta, they play in smaller venues. They had to move.
Great.
But, I mean, I don't know how you explain, like, honestly, look at the Golden State Valkyries. It's an expansion team. They've already sold out, I think it's 18,000 season tickets. Caitlyn doesn't play there.
This is to the point that we're making. It's like, why are they taking this negative lens and this negative framework to talk about it? First of all, get your facts right, obviously. Like, your wires crossed. Like, I understand that you got your wires crossed, so that doesn't really do anything for anybody when all of your viewers now think that that is the case. So unless you went back and said that that was untrue or that that was false or you got messed up. But also, like, there's... we've been to the Liberty Games. They're full. It looks full in Vegas. It looks full every single place that you go. TD Garden sold out when Caitlyn wasn't playing there for a regular season. Like, it's happening all over the WNBA. So let's just not to say that we can't have any sort of criticism or we can't look at things critically in women's sports, but the ways in which some of these, frankly, it's a lot of men, these male journalists or talking heads are constantly using a negative framework or a diminishing framework to talk about women's sports is really harmful. You have big platforms. You have huge platforms. Like, people do listen to you. So at the very least, like, get your facts straight. If you're not going to every single time LeBron James doesn't play on TV, if you're not going to every single time say this is lower than the average game that LeBron, then don't say it about Caitlyn.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
And again,
hated.
I often talk about this ecosystem. They are a big part of the ecosystem. They're
sure.
a needed part of the ecosystem. Their opinions. And I think women's basketball does need to be critiqued. The play on the floor, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more of that at this point. Anyways, moving on. So something that I learned in the response to last week's pod was on social media, a lot of the comments that well, first of all, I did sign out of my Twitter because I was like, oh, I don't even want to deal. And then I was like, I started getting a couple positive texts. And then I was like, well, let me check this out.
Well,
let me see what's going
Is
on.
that some affirmation?
Yeah,
Give me that.
I know. I was like, okay, maybe it's not so bad.
It's not bad.
No, I know. I'm joking. So I did go on because I was like, let me see what's going on. I also feel like I have gotten to a much better place with my relationship with social media.
Yeah.
I understand it's not real. And so I more so laugh at some of the comments because I know I have such, it's also because I feel so comfortable and confident in my opinion in this basketball space that nothing can really dent that anymore, which is nice.
Love that for you.
Yeah, it's actually really big for me.
It's growth.
Because I do care what people think. That I can honestly say that. Anyways, with that, I noticed in the first, let's call it 8, 10, 12 hours even, of the pod dropping and my comments, a lot of positive, a lot of thank yous, a lot of this is what I've been trying to say, things of that nature. And then it was something, again, I can't remember, 8, 10, 12 hour mark where it started to shift and it was more negative. And I was like, well, let me do some tapping.
Something in the water.
So you start tapping these profiles, 2 followers, 5 followers.
Eggheads?
And it really was interesting.
That's what I
Yeah,
call 'em,
it was really
eggheads.
interesting because this is something you know, but to see it for me firsthand, I have no idea exactly how any of these trolls and bots work, but how interesting that it was all positive and then like a moment came where it clicked and it was negative and most of it, not all of it, some of it was real people, but most of it was then just trolls and potentially bots just getting in there. So I thought that was something, I wanted to share.
Very telling. That's,
I think,
yeah.
The other things I just wanted to tap on was, I feel like a lot of conversations I've had, again, real people, real conversations is, some people say, well, these athletes just need to stay off social media. We've kind of already addressed this. They can't. Their livelihoods are on there. It's not that simple. Yeah, and for some, maybe it is to just go out there and
You don't need to be on there
ignore.
like 100 hours a day, but
it's
it's
not
a part of our lives.
Yes, and it's more so how to manage it. The other thing I would say is, because that kind of segues into people saying, well, this is just what comes with fame. This is just what comes with being mainstream
Abuse?
sports. Yeah. And to me, it's like, forget the trolls for a second. You're talking about the Chicago Sky players being met with people at their bus when they arrived at an away game,
It's really
an away
scary.
hotel. You're talking about Dejanay Carrington's email.
Yeah.
The threatening email she got where she's told
Death
to
threats.
death threats,
Rape threats. Violence threats.
using the N-word in there. So, I just want to touch on how, yes, I understand that fame and status does bring some of this. I think it's sad. I do think it's something, sadly, that is part of our culture. And yes, you do have to learn to manage it. You know, we try to eradicate it. We're probably not going to get rid of all of it. But I also want to just say, for women, it's different. I think for women, these threats are different. A lot of times it's, male athletes. Well, first of all, a lot of them have security 24/7. They have the finances to do that. The other part of it, and we talked about this the other day, it's like, it is a known fact. When a guy goes on a blind date, what is he most scared of? That she's going to be ugly or that she's going to think he's ugly?
Yeah.
And when a woman goes on a blind date, what is she most scared of?
That he's going to kill her.
I mean, this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
And so when
the threat
when
for women
Carrington gets a death threat, it's a different thing.
The threat for women and violence against women in all forms of society for all of history is very real. And people need to understand that this is just because you're an athlete and just because your job is in public or you're a celebrity or whatever does not give anybody the right to abuse you. That's insane. Like, what? This is the kind of society that we want to live in. Like, what if someone came to your job and did that? That's like,
and we're not talking about
insane.
We're not talking about getting criticized.
No,
that's not what this is.
No, we're
and
talking about real threats.
This is the nuance, right? People put that in one bucket. These are like separate buckets.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the actual death threats.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to add just off the back, and this is going to be a continuing conversation that we'll go back to, racism in the WNBA, because it is what it is, like meaning it exists. Racism has literally always been here, and you can go back to, I want to say it was like 2007-ish, when Don Imus called the Rutgers basketball team nappy-headed hoes. That thought popped in my head as like a great example of showcasing how racism has been here. It has been here. And that, I feel like that really takes us to the video that was going around, that was recirculating from this year's NCAA tournament, where A'ja Wilson is sitting courtside with Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young. They were mic'd, and A'ja and Plum were having a conversation where A'ja essentially says to Plum, she's talking about Paige Beckers, but she gives Plum a compliment by saying, essentially, I'm not quoting direct.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah. That Plum acknowledges her white privilege. And everybody went crazy, as if to say, A'ja was saying to Kelsey Plum that, this is where this is mind-blowing, that she only got to where she is because she's white. I just want everyone to know.
That's what people took from that.
Yeah. That is not what A'ja was saying.
No.
All A'ja was saying is that Plum does a great job of acknowledging her white privilege.
Yeah,
it doesn't
and that A'ja
mean
appreciates that.
Yeah.
Because that's a reality.
It doesn't mean Plum didn't work hard. It doesn't mean Plum doesn't deserve everything she's gotten on the court, off the court. That's not what that conversation was. That conversation was, Plum, you have worked hard. Plum, you deserve everything you've gotten. Plum, you're a baller. You've proven yourself. And for those that know Plum's story, they know. She got picked number one, but then she had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Plum has 100% earned that on her own, having nothing to do with race. But also, she's a white woman in our world. And white people have privilege. That's all it means.
Yeah.
And Plum acknowledges that. So while she worked hard and got what she deserved on the court, there's also areas of her life where she has white privilege. And this is what it is. And A'ja was acknowledging that. And I couldn't really understand how people could misunderstand that.
Well, I feel like if you're finding yourself being defensive over what A'ja said, you might want to check in about what it is exactly that you're defending.
I don't know.
It might be racism.
It was just very confusing.
Yeah.
So that's a conversation that we're likely going to continue to have
Absolutely.
as time goes on. And that takes us to the intersection. We are going to check out Paige Beckers. Her off season was incredible, but also sparked a lot of conversation. We're going to basically follow Paige as she went on her world tour this past summer. But before we get to that, she commented recently. So let's take a listen.
Paige, nobody had a better summer than you, huh?
I had a pretty good summer. I enjoyed it. It was like my first healthy off season where I wasn't in a place rehabbing, staying at school, getting stronger. So I took advantage of it. Everybody saw the world tour. They didn't see the work tour, which is fine. They see like me 3-4 hours a day and think they know my entire 24 hours, which is cool. It's fine. The work will always show. I'm a believer in that. I have confidence in that. And I can already see, like, if I don't have a game up to other people's standards, it's like should have been in the gym all summer, shouldn't have been doing this, shouldn't have been doing that. But luckily, I don't play for their approval. I play for God. I play for my teammates, I play for my coaching staff. I play for the people who support me, good game or bad in their opinion. So all that to say, I had a great summer, yeah.
What I love most about this quote is she's getting ahead of the bullshit.
Smart.
She got ahead of the bullshit. She knew it was going to come.
Paige is on her
She's
PR
probably
bullshit.
been hearing it, and
Yeah.
she got ahead of it. But I know you have some thoughts too.
Well, I mean, I certainly loved following along. So, Paige, thank you for sharing all that you did. I was also like, who the hell's paying for all these jets? And can I get them paid for me also? Can I go on the Paige World Tour next summer? No, I have a lot of thoughts. I think my first overall thought is like, this is just such an amazing time in women's sports where like we're getting to be appreciated and celebrated and like live these really cool lives. And I'm just like so happy for Paige. Second of all, I know Paige works with Susan and I know she's on that work
we
tour.
saw the work tour.
We saw the work
at
tour.
WNBA All-Star.
We saw you, Paige.
We saw some of that work tour.
Yeah.
We saw you coming
Shoes
in and out of the
hand
hotel.
At
Yeah.
120 degrees, going to get your workout in. And then we saw you later that night.
Well, remember, everybody, we had Paige on our live show at the
Yeah.
All-Star
Yeah.
game. And, listen, sometimes these shows get a little longer than we planned, okay?
Let's-
Get a little longer than we planned.
Yeah.
They go a little long. At one point, Paige was joining the stage, and Aubrey handed me a little piece of paper and was basically like, Paige has a heart out because she has to
Heart
go
out.
to her workout.
Yeah. We were like, oh.
So
We know
that
how
was
that
both,
works, yeah.
World Tour and Work Tour.
We've
tour
definitely
happened.
been in, not quite a Paige World Tour. That was probably better than any summer that we had while we were playing. But we've definitely lived that grind where you're like, if you want to do both, the work comes first and you're up early or you're landing and you're getting your workouts in or you're finding places to do them. So like, we know that that's happening. I think also having a summer with no rehab for Paige, this
Oh
poor
my
child
God.
has been rehabbing.
I'm free.
I mean, she has like, if you are ever questioning Paige's work, I mean, just look at what she has battled through and
You can see it, by the way, in her
Yeah.
body.
Oh,
Her upper
she's
body
getting
looks
the-
bigger. She
gonna
she
be
does
hitting
like
the shrub
showing
this
it,
year.
but you can see it. She looks
so
stronger.
like, honestly, good for you for just like living a little and having fun. You need that. We talked about it before. You need the release as an athlete. You need to have that fun. This is the summer. She's not in season. She's not in school. Like, she can have a little fun. So I really did love that. Obviously, the work will show. We can't wait for Paige to dominate this season. And then it does go into this thing that I mentioned earlier of like people's belief or attitudes that they get to decide what it takes to be an elite professional athlete. And I'm like, you guys actually don't know because you're not an elite professional athlete. Paige actually is an elite professional athlete. And obviously professional athletes are. So like sitting from your couch, frankly, and telling a professional athlete what it takes to be a professional athlete is ridiculous. And this idea that like, unless you are sacrificing your mind, body, soul, all your time and all of your energy, then like that's not good enough and you're going to get judged for that is just very dehumanizing, I think, and takes all of the sort of personhood and the humanity out of being a professional athlete. Like, we're not just here for your entertainment. Like, it is an entertainment sport. I understand that. But like, we're here to do our craft and live our life as well, and to not be given any space for that. So I feel like that was already coming for Paige, or she's already seen it in her comments, or people have already said it. So she was like,
Yeah. So
not true.
I mean, the one thing you can't argue, she's been living her life.
She's been living
we're
it.
gonna go through. Honestly, we got like a whole list here. We're gonna document. We probably missed some stuff, but on April 15th, we saw Paige at the WNBA draft.
Being a super fan.
in New York. On April 19th, the Bulls played the Heat in Miami.
Living La Vida Loca.
She was there as well. On June 10th, she was in Boston, Game 2 of the NBA Finals, Mavs Celtics,
Yeah.
which had lower viewership. No, just kidding.
because LeBron James was in it.
On July 5th, she was in Seattle.
My birthday.
She was
Thank
in
you, Paige.
Seattle for Megan's birthday, supporting Nika Mule. July
that.
11th, she hit LA for the ESPYs.
In a great kid super suit. Awesome.
July 20th, WNBA All-Star.
That's where we
Phoenix,
saw the work
Arizona.
tour happening.
We did see the work tour. August 13th, she was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, throughout the first pitch at a Twins game. August 15th, she went to a Mystics Lynx
Looks
game.
like she was home for the weekend.
supporting Dorka.
Minnesota's finest.
September 1st, she was back in Connecticut at Mohegan supporting Nika again, where the Storm played the Sun. September 6th, Queens, New York, that U.S. Open semifinal.
Supporting Big Foe.
And then September 8th in Brooklyn, the Liberty versus the Aces. She was there with AZ, Jordan Childs. I believe she was there with Nike. And then during New York Fashion Week, which was around the same time, September 11th, she was at the Off-White show. And finally, we recently saw her on September 29th at a Chargers game in LA, to which she said, "Don't worry, I will be back in class."
I do appreciate the posting the receipts of back in class.
So good.
Really, all I'm seeing is once or twice a month she's getting out of Stores, Connecticut, which
Can't blame
I
her for that.
get.
Can't blame
Not
her
a
for
lot
that.
going on there. Love you guys. Not a lot going on there. I'd probably be wanting to get out every week as well.
Watch your mouth.
But all I see is just her having a little bit of fun through her summer before she locks
Getting
in.
some fits off, supporting
love
her mates. I love it too.
It's great. She's honestly a great fan, rivaling me for a fan. I take a
know.
lot of pride in my fandom.
Yeah. We need to get her a disposable camera, then she can get on your level.
Yeah. I think she had some sort of camera at the U.S. Open. I still need to get those pictures developed, by the way. But we love Paige. We love your world tour. We can't wait to see your work be shown on the court this year and seeing some of these in the pull-up game.
Now it's time for our Shouts and Flowers presented by L'Oreal Paris. You all hear us talk a lot on the show about the athletes we admire, but sometimes it can go by fast. So we wanted to stop and take a dedicated moment to talk about our Shouts and Flowers presented by L'Oreal Paris.
Today, we'd like to highlight Portland Thorns forward Christine Sinclair, leading goal scorer in international soccer history, men or women. She's literally the GOAT. She's retiring at the end of the 2024 NWSL League season. Sinclair's final regular season game will be November 1st against Angel City FC in Portland, where the Thorns will honor her career. Sinclair's 190 goals for Canada are the most for any player in men's or women's international soccer history. She retired from Canada duty at the end of 2023, ending a 20-year international career that included 6 World Cups, 4 Olympics, 2 bronze medals, and an Olympic gold medal in 2021. My longtime rival, my one-year teammate, I wish I could have played with you more, Sink. You had an incredible career. I've never seen anything more dominant than our year we won the national championship, 2004. You were crazy. I was a freshman. You were a fifth-year senior. It was like you were such a woman among little girls, and it just was like unbelievable. You're one of the best to ever do it. Thank you for blessing us with your presence for so long. Congrats on an incredible career. Retirement is amazing, and welcome to this side of things.
Vox Creative.
This is advertiser content brought to you by L'Oreal Paris. A heads up that the following story briefly mentions sexual violence. Please take care.
What I know is that you are born worthy.
Today, I'm so honored to introduce you to one of L'Oreal Paris's Women of Worth.
So my full name is Shavantanae Morgie Morningstar Davis, but everyone calls me Star. And I am the founding executive director of the Star Institute.
Each year, L'Oreal Paris launches a nationwide search for 10 extraordinary nonprofit leaders to be named Women of Worth honorees. Each honoree receives $25,000 to support their charitable cause, mentorship from L'Oreal Paris Network, and a national platform to amplify their stories and their work. In 2021, Star Davis was one of these L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth.
Being a L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth honoree has fully changed the trajectory of where the Star Institute is going.
The Star Institute is committed to ending childhood sexual abuse, and this work is very personal to Star.
I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I said, but when I get older, I'm going to help kids like me. The Star Institute is me making good on that promise.
Now, as an alum, she wants to encourage other leaders to apply to the program.
Do it. And do it unapologetically. Do it with your whole chest out. Do it with your head held high. Do it with knowing that you are worthy. You are worthy.
Learn more about Star Davis and the Star Institute and about this year's recipients at womenofworth.com. The Bicker of the Week. It's the Bicker of the Week. When your partner's being sleek, it's the Bicker of the Week. Yeah.
All right,
Wow.
this week's Bicker of the Week.
I am sleek.
Oh, you think so? I don't miss a fucking thing. All right, this week's Bicker of the Week has to do with how we vacation.
What about it?
Well, when we're on it, one of us
Ugh.
looks and chases the sun while the other doesn't. So the bicker, this is actually both, this is a bicker and are you a Megan or are you Sue? But the bicker aspect of it is, and I'll let you tell it, what happens when we wake up in the morning? This is where the bicker happens.
Basically, when we wake up in the morning, we're on the clock for when we need to be out, fully laid out in the sun. And I'm like, first of all, I can't handle this much direct exposure to the sun. It's a lot. So I definitely need the umbrella. But it's like, maybe we want to sleep in. Maybe we
you're
want to
acting like
have a
I set my
leisurely
alarm.
breakfast.
All right, you go ahead.
Maybe we want to get a massage, a long one.
We do all
That
of those
isn't
things.
at 9 a.m. because we need to be done by 10. Maybe we want a 90-minute massage at 11.
We do all of those things.
Starting at 9 a.m.
No.
You drive us out into the sun. You do. Sometimes I forget to, and I'm like, oh, what if we, did X, Y, or Z in the morning? And you're not saying it, but you're like, and I'm like, what? This makes no sense. Like, what if we just, you're like, well.
The bicker also occurs when we're doing umbrella placement. Because you want to be in the shade.
I need my décolletage up. My neck, my face, my
they have surgery
décolletage
for that?
out of the sun. There's what?
Is there surgery for that?
No,
My
you get one skin to wear. It's kind of like your teeth. You get one skin to wear for your life.
You can get two of those.
Yeah, it's true. But they don't have skin replacements yet, okay? I need it out. It's too sensitive. I pay too much and work too hard.
I don't want trouble with my décolletage either.
my décolletage. But you do. It's in full sun exposure all the time. Well, she uses sunscreen, you guys.
Oh, gosh.
She
I
uses
use
sunscreen.
sunscreen.
She used to not wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
keep
And
my
we've had
eyes
some
closed.
eyelid burn.
No.
Yes, you have.
Like once.
Same.
Literally.
It happens.
What's funny is you get burnt more than I do because I'm a psycho about sunscreen.
That's true. I have more sensitive. I got a heat rash last time I went to Mexico.
Yeah.
But the sun was actually just too hot for me.
Yeah, but what we've discovered is it's just because of our sports backgrounds. I come from a sport where, okay, well, first of all, obviously I play an indoor sport, so that's obvious. Second of all, I lived for essentially 20 years in Seattle or Russia.
Tough.
Okay?
Your skin looks amazing.
Okay?
Though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My skin does look amazing because I'm vitamin D deficient.
Yeah. And then when she's in the sun, you guys, it's like.
So it's like this is my only chance to get any sun exposure.
Where we sit at the pool, where the umbrella is, the time we get out there, when we have
I'm a total
lunch.
dictator.
Are we? Thank you.
I'm a total dictator.
Thank you for saying that.
But I let you have your umbrella. My thing is like, why does your umbrella have to encroach on my sun exposure?
Because they're big and we're sitting next to each other. So
well,
like you can't.
Move a little bit.
Well, I'm not moving away.
Get a big hat.
Okay, fine. We'll go on vacation separately. Fine. Is this what you're saying? Is this the story
really?
I'm telling
I
myself?
said move down a little bit, and you said, fine, I'm going on a different vacation.
Fine. Go on vacation by yourself.
A whole new bicker right here. What an interpretation of move down a little bit.
The story I'm telling myself is you don't want to go on vacation with me.
Anyway, so I am a direct sun exposure person.
Yeah.
Megan is not, and
I like it on my body.
We fight
from,
about it.
You know.
Décolletage down.
Yeah, from the headlights
Décolletage.
down. Décolletage. Yeah, that's the beaker. The beaker.
Bicker
That's
of
the
the
bicker. We don't run into it that often. We do run into it when I want to book massages that aren't at 9 a.m. in the morning. It just happened.
I've loosened up.
A little bit.
I've loosened up.
Just, we're not going to do the how much or not. How much you've loosened up or not.
Why are you getting specific?
Okay. Okay.
Acknowledge the progress.
Okay. I will. Yeah. Good job, babe. Good job. Proud of you. Proud of you.
Proud of you. So before we leave you, we're going to give you a touch more. This is another topic that's likely going to be reoccurring, and it's something that we want everyone to think about. Recently, the LA Times reported on October 7th how 4 opponents forfeit their volleyball games against San Jose State to protest a transgender player. So in a nutshell, San Jose State co-captain joined an anti-trans lawsuit against her teammate, the same one that Riley Gaines is a part of, that's suing the NCAA because for transgender eligibility policies and how they violate Title IX. The lawsuit basically says that their inclusion in the women's team poses an unfair advantage. In the article, it says San Jose State has said that addressing the gender identity of its athletes would violate school policy, and the schools that forfeited matches have not stated publicly that the presence of a transgender player is the reason for the cancellations. Nevertheless, statements by other officials leave no doubt that the transgender player is the issue. There have been governors that have come out in support of the player who joined the lawsuit, essentially against the trans player. You know, one thing that sticks out is in one of the quotes, it says, "It's important we stand for integrity and fairness in female athletics." And that obviously,
I was like,
in our opinion, is not what's happening.
that's interesting. That's the first time you've jumped into this conversation.
Well, I mean, we talk about it all the time. I know you have some things you want to get into, but that when this happens for me personally, the first thing I think of is, oh, well, where you've been. This is supposedly, in protection of women's sports and to help it be fair and equitable and all these things. And it's like, you have not done that in any other category. And that's where I'm just like, okay, so you're just using trans athletes as a way to push your political agendas, to rile people up, to scare them, to prey on those that might not be as educated or knowledgeable around this issue, to then get them to say, like, this isn't fair. And again, rile them up so you can get their vote. That's always, whenever politicians get involved in this, it's always what I think. And I think even for some of the people involved, whether it's the athlete herself who is a part of the lawsuit, it's all around fear. It's all around fear and the unknown.
Yeah, it's a lot of fear mongering going on, because I think where I go immediately with all the, the way this is framed from the right is like, we have to protect women, who they are deeming women. I guess they get to be the ones that are, defining what it is to be a woman, like all women are women. What they're trying to do is scare everybody. And I'm like, where's all of the things that we're so fearful of? Where is it happening?
Where
are they? Because to my knowledge, like, there's a couple professional trans athletes, a couple. All of these cases that you're seeing all around the country, and we'll reference this one specifically. It's a 12-year-old trans girl in West Virginia that this article is from 2023, and this case went to the Supreme Court in 2023 because West Virginia wanted to prohibit this little girl from playing on her middle school sports teams, her middle school track team. So this child is now having to challenge the government of the United States of America at the highest level to exist at all and to play some damn middle school sports. Like, we're running track and we're throwing shot puts, and I don't know what, I mean, I remember my middle school track.
I don't think you're throwing shot puts at that point.
They're tall enough to be throwing shot puts.
Strong enough.
And just what I always come back to is, like, cruelty is the point here. Cruelty is the point to, whether it's overpower, whether it's a certain kid, because usually it's like a couple of kids in each state. in Utah. We've seen it in some states in the South. Obviously, these schools, one from Wyoming, Boise State. But this case in particular in West Virginia, this is like one child having to take on the burden of like going against the entire government of a country. Like, this is insane. And really, it's to legislate people out of existence. That's the point, is to make it so they can't exist at all. Because these people on the right, frankly, a lot of the Republicans and the really conservative agendas don't believe they even have the right to exist. And that's the point. It's not about women's sports.
No,
it's not about fairness. It's not about the threat that all of a sudden trans athletes are going to take over women. I'm just like, well, that's not happening.
It hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. It's never happening. It hasn't happened. It's never happened. It's not happening right now. Like, what are we even talking about? And it's so disingenuous from, frankly, a lot of male politicians jumping into this like, oh my God, we have to save women and protect the integrity and preserve spaces for, come on. That is just like utter bullshit. I also think it's ironic, at the very least, from the party of small government, hands off my guns, hands off my religion, my taxes, my money, my everything, my free speech. But we're going to legislate this, and we're going to have our hands all over these kids' bodies, frankly. We're going to have our hands all over their lives, all over their choices, all over their school, all over their ability to play sports and to be a part of community. We all know why sports is so amazing. Of course, at the highest level, great. We want to win, and it's a business. So, okay. 99.999% of people are not going to,
there. Yeah.
are not going.
Not even going to college.
They're not even going to college.
So even that's a small percentage.
And to take this away under the completely disingenuous guise of protecting women's sports, when protecting women's sports and protecting women has never been what they've been into, and never been a thing that they've been fighting for, until all of a sudden I'm like, that's when I didn't see you in our equal pay fight. And I didn't see you coming out of the woodwork to protect, the WNBA or protect women's sports leagues. And now all of a sudden we're using this so cruelly. I mean, it's so cruel. I just am like thinking of this little 12-year-old and it was the ACLU brought this case. It was, this little 12-year-old in West Virginia, like having to go to the Supreme Court and being like, I deserve to exist and I deserve the right to, and I'm in here defending my right to play some goddamn youth sports. Like, what are we talking about, you guys? Come on.
That to me is using that to really hurt children is really what this is. And using that to, like I said before, get votes. We're talking about, you already referenced, like such a small number of trans kids in the country. Such a small number. And yet that small number is being attacked in a way that's going to lead to, for a lot of these Republican politicians, to big voting numbers. Because of the fear. And that is why they're doing it.
Yeah.
That is the motivation. And when people can't see that, or I should say for those that don't see that, they do get pulled in to the fear aspect of it. They do get riled up. And I think women's sports in general, is a place that does pride itself on fairness. And so I always say, like, I think that makes sports in general more susceptible to the conversation of fairness. And it's easier to fearmonger in there. It's easier to stoke that flame.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's hard to change my mind on this. It is so Republicans can get votes. That is it. So to allow yourself to be used for that, I think is where you lose me.
Yeah, and for women's athletes, like, you're being used as a pawn if you're supporting this, for the Riley Gaines of the world and for other female athletes. Like, when have they gone to bat for you before? This is all about legislating people out of existence. And like you said, fear mongering and gaining votes. And it's so cynical and it's so cruel and it's so sad. And it's really sad to see, it's like even in this San Jose State, they're forfeiting the games, but not saying why. You ain't got no business to stand on. Like you're not going to say what you're doing. You're not going to say why you're forfeiting the games. Like if you believe in something so much, you can't even say what it is. You can't even defend it. Like that to me just proves the lack of credibility, I think, that it has. And again, to the point, I keep saying it over and over, but it's just cruel. And I think cruelty is the point. And it's like, to what end? To what? Until what? Trans people don't exist? Well, they do. Remember when it was illegal to be gay? Remember when interracial marriage was illegal? Remember when it was illegal for women to have a credit card in 1970? Like, wake up, people. This is where we're going back to, and it's not going to stop at trans people. That's what I want to be.
Yes,
it's not stopping there. Roe v. Wade has been rolled back. Mm-hmm. Contraceptive use, they want to roll back. Like they want to track your period. They want to
the entryway
Project 2025
into controlling everything.
It's an entryway into controlling mostly women, for sure.
That's the sad part. And again, it's not something that is impacting women's sports at any rate.
It's just not happening.
I know.
Like it's just literally not happening at all. So we definitely will be coming back to this conversation, but we wanted to get this in and talk about it. And just, it makes our blood boil. And it's just so sad. And it's just utter bullshit. So that's our thoughts on that.
And that's it for this episode. Thanks to L'Oreal Paris for their support. What does "because you're worth it" mean to you? Where do you draw a feeling of worthiness from? We heard from Star Davis of the Star Institute early today that worthiness is something we're born with, something it is our duty to help others feel. L'Oreal Paris knows that every single woman, every person, is worth it. L'Oreal is there to remind you of that in whatever way you need, whether it's inspiration from our Women of Worth honorees or the simple beauty product that lets you shine. L'Oreal's got your back. When you know you're worth it, you inspire others to know that they're worth it too. Learn more at l'orealparis.com.